This week, they teased it. They gave their show yesterday, and Nortel is bringing out a very interesting series, the VX series of rack-mounted low to mid-size power transmitters. And they have taken the V300 VS series, and they've really improved it. It's modular. A lot of the activity that you need to do in terms of servicing or resolving issues can be done without a soldering pencil even. And so the VX2 is being shown at the NAB show. I understand that the NUG meeting on Sunday will be streamed. If you have interest in seeing that, I don't have all the details, but I'm sure it's going to be on the site there at Nortel, and there's going to be a couple broadcasts from their booth during the show. So, well, good stuff. And it's not just Nortel. Hey, we have great guys today from Digital Alert Systems, DASDEC. Bill Robertson, Ed Czarnecki, and Adam Jones are with us this morning, and they're going to be talking about some of the great things in the 5th generation. It's now DASDEC-II. And Bill, let's turn to you first. I'm going to mute all the microphones to get rid of background noise. So you want to unmute yourself, Bill. Ed, Adam, take it away.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Well, let me just do a, if I can, Barry, if you can offer me a screen share.
You have it now.
Okay. I am looking for, Zoom has changed their things here a bit, so I've got to find how I can get to it. Oh boy, wouldn't you know it? It's going to be one of those things. I was afraid of this. Give me just a moment. I've got to open up some options here with Zoom.
They do seem to make changes that are sometimes not really immediately understandably as to why.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is a lot of sandboxing of different applications too inside the OS. So let's see, there we got it. We can share and I can bring it up. So now hopefully everyone has a chance to see that screen.
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Okay, good. Well, appreciate the opportunity, Barry. One of the things that was exciting about this is an opportunity to kind of just ahead of NAB, and the timing worked out extremely well, just ahead of NAB to get forward with the group and kind of talk a little bit about a pre-NAB product announcement that we've got. So going on, just kind of a quick review, we want to talk about some of the things that we looked at is, okay, taking our product, what are the considerations that we need to look at for improving it? What different things have feedback that we get, like what people like, what people don't like, what do we have and what areas that we could look at to improve it? Want to kind of take that information and then project it into what we've done with our product line. Also, as part of that whole thing, we've got a new version 5.0 software, and give everybody kind of a sneak peek. There's some real key things that we're doing in 5.0 that further exactly our commitment towards security. You brought up the things about cyber attacks, things like that, that's constantly going at it. And if you don't stay on top of that, those are the kinds of things that will not only get you, but they'll get you bad. And then finally, leave some room for some Q&A. I think that you guys queued up a couple of questions. One thing relative to the recent NOI from the FCC. Other areas that we've looked at and considered, Barry, you brought up Evoca and some other real interesting things that Evoca is doing that we've worked with them on. So jumping into it, this doesn't have to be me just kind of rattling, but if you guys have some things you want to put forward or questions, please, by all means, go ahead and unmute. Give me some feedback. If you want to wait to the end, that's perfectly fine. When we looked at the product improvements, we wanted to say, okay, we want to reduce the number of models. I'm going to take you through a little bit and show you how many models we really have, but the models are kind of defined by certain key features they have, either primarily hardware elements that they have, and being able to share that. The modularity was important to us so that you can start from a very low end cost point and process point up to a very, very high-end point. Again, where we have a lot of interfaces into video equipment, things like that. Barry, you brought up ATSC-III, for example, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But we want to look at that and really kind of reduce the number of models, but we don't want to lose our modularity, that ability to be able to customize a configuration to a requirement, so you don't have to overbuy something that you don't need, but you're also not being forced to buy a particular type of product that is way too much for what you're really needing. We wanted to also look at reducing the number of internal components. Anytime you put an internal component, obviously it costs more connectors, and connectors have a couple of things. One, cost. They've also got a high probability of failure. I mean, the less number of connection points we can do, the better off we are for reliability. We also wanted to look at how do we reduce the number of hardware options. In other words, hardware, again, the consideration of the cost of the hardware option, whether the things we could do, what's possible to do in software now with some of the things that we can do, so we can reduce the number of hardware options. And again, maybe reduce connectors or cabling, other things like that, which cause cost. And one thing that we always got nailed on was our connector interface for audio. Again, we used on the DASDEC-II and the OneNet series, those products use a terminal strip type of thing, and we're always kind of getting pounded on that. So I've got some nice things to talk about that. Also, moving into the future, we wanted to provide beyond just a standard NTSC video thing, but also go to HD and provide a high definition video output that people could use for digital signage, for different displays. And so we really wanted to look and consider that. But most importantly too, we wanted to create a springboard. In other words, not everything's going to be in the product, day one, but we want to make sure that there's an ample runway that we can continue to add features, functions, capability way beyond what we have even today. And that's a real critical thing. And a lot of the stuff that we have is, do we create that springboard? Can we give this something that's going to give us a lot more future flexibility and future power that we've got? Any questions so far? Kind of keeping it open. Barry, can you hear me okay? Okay, good. Just making sure. My screen went blank on the other side, but I'm just making sure. So right now, when you look across our product list, we really have 16 different models. Now, they're all based on the DASDEC, and you see that big, long model matrix. Now, the ones that are in green are actually our OneNet series. This is coming from our cable side. So it's based on the DASDEC product, but we labeled it OneNet, and that's the marketing name that we used into the cable world. That was actually under our original parent company, Monroe Electronics. We have moved away Monroe. We sold the Monroe EAS, the ESD, the Electrostatic Test Division. We sold that in 2018, and along with that, the company wanted the Monroe Electronics name because it was very well associated with the electrostatic test. So in that particular context, the ones in green are our cable products. The ones in red are our EOC products. These are the ones that are used by emergency operations centers. We have the capability in the DASDEC series to generate and feed information into IPAWS. So not just listening to IPAWS, but our capabilities allow us to actually generate messages that emergency operations centers can use to generate messages into IPAWS. So with those 16 different models, they're differentiated by different hardware and software features. So in other words, the LC model and the LCR, the R suffix at the end of that means that it contains the internal receiver, so that if you order the unit with an R suffix, it's going to have receivers. So that causes multiple combinations of one series without receivers and other series with receivers. And that means the hardware cost, everything associated with that receiver componentry versus non-receiver components. So it has a lot of stuff that you have to deal with. Also, if you have a hardware feature, the unit really needs to come back to the factory to open the box up, install the hardware, retest it, and then send it back out. So it's going to require a trip to the factory if you want to do a hardware upgrade. Again, that goes back to the thing of how many things and more things could we do in software and be able to do that. So right now, we have the DASDEC-II and the OneNet SE series. That's the big one. But we are introducing the new DASDEC-III. Now, a couple of things about DASDEC-III. Obviously, it's the third in the series, but it's going to be a homogeneous product across all brands. In other words, we're dropping the OneNet brand name. It's going to be available in cable versions, all the different things, but it's on the DASDEC-III platform. So the DASDEC-III, we've actually reduced it down to 2 different models of a DASDEC-III. They're all DASDEC-III, but there's different things around it. Again, this is to differentiate a little bit of the hardware, keep some of the cost out. There's the EL, which we call the DAS-III for DASDEC-III EL or entry level, and then the DAS-III EX, EX standing for expandable. We can do more, we can expand different functions on that. The EL is a 2-channel EAS cap decoder. So the capabilities that it's actually an encoder decoder that you have for 2 channels. So again, you can have 2 radios. When you look at the minimum requirements for FCC compliance, it just says you must have at least 2 inputs. Right there, you've got it with the DAS-EL. On the EX, it is expanded right off the bat to a 4-channel system. So now we're talking about 4 channels, going again beyond that, so that you have additional radio input, you've got additional monitoring inputs that you have. The EL has a 4x20 character, so we've actually doubled the display size. Our current unit has a 2x20 character display, but the EX has a 4x20 character. They both have 4x20, but the EL is a monochromatic one and the EX is a color display. Nice thing about having a color display is we can do more with the colors. Different things are happening with it. Again, functionals, the things that we could do to expand it. They both now include what we call multifunction keypad. So instead of just having the single button on the front that you would press twice within 8 seconds to cause an RWT, that's typically how it was programmed, that multifunction keypad lets us do more with inputs, different things that we could do for allowing you to, say, for example, set up the IP address without having to plug in and hook up to it on the network. Doing different functions like sending an RWT, doing validation, because now we have more keys that we can use and create menu items on the particulars for the interacting with that display. The other thing that we've added, and I'll talk about it when I get to the rear panel, is modular connectors. There are different things on the way that we've done the audio using modular connectors for both of them. Now, the EL does not have any expansion slots. Again, that's part of it as an entry level. You know, again, it will work. It does everything it's supposed to do, but it doesn't have the expansion. And on the EX series, we added 3 slots for expansion. So again, we have multiple modules that you can plug in there to expand different functionality, more GPIOs, more audio inputs, things like that. And I'll explain that in a minute. We also have added optional AES switching. And the AES was actually a hardware module, a separate hardware module in our older products. You had to buy it either with the DAS-RAD or anything else. But what we've done now is made AES switching an option on either model. And it's really cool the way that we've integrated that particular thing. So when you look at the front panel, again, on both units front panel, you have to have a front panel speaker. That's actually a requirement in the Part 11 rules on encoder decoders. We've got now 3 LEDs that we have for information. In the past, we just had 2, but now we've got 3, a green, a yellow, and a red, for example, when there's an alert going on. As I indicated before, we've doubled the display size from 2 to 4 lines, allowing us more capabilities. And as I talked about before, that multifunction keypad to be able to have different functions and selections available and matching up with that display. On the rear panel, this is the what we call the DAS-III EL. And I've highlighted the rear panel. There are some things that will come up there, but as I've kind of put forward here, hopefully you can see my screen okay, or my cursor okay. The ones that are kind of shaded out aren't functional in the EL. They might be there and represented on the unit, but they are non-functional. Big thing right here, program audio in and out is now using RJ45 connectors. We've moved away from the terminal strip. We've gone to RJ45s, which are representative of a lot of different things. I'll talk a little bit more about that too. So now the interconnects can be done with simple latching cables, and it's very easy to bypass them. Again, this is a standard that a lot of people have adopted for different things. You see Wheatstone, other console guys are using the similar kind of connectors. So now, instead of having to have XLRs and big bulky connectors or anything like that, we can do it with Cat5 wiring, and it's really kind of a slick thing. On the EL, we've got the radios, and again, you're seeing Radio 1 and Radio 2 as options. One of the slick things we've done now is the radios are going to be set up as already on board, but you can enable them with software. So in other words, we don't have to have different R suffix where you have to have hardware for it. The hardware is there, it's resident, and it can be enabled. The EL doesn't have the 3rd radio input, so that's why it's grayed out here. The other thing that you see, again, some standard things that we've done, we've added more USB ports and a single network adapter. We've got the HDMI now for high definition output, including audio, which means the alert audio is a channel in the HDMI output. So again, tying it into digital signage, other event types of devices that you want. It's all there, it's capable. It can be just enabled with the license key to be able to enact that. Again, very simple, very straightforward. If you look at the expanded version, again, now everything is opened up, and I've shown this with a couple of options. One of the options here is showing the AES audio. So the AES audio is now, again, RJ45 based connectors in and out. To be able to do that, that just opens up, and that module now pops on and populates the board. So the one hardware option that we're showing here is this very simple. And what's nice about this, it doesn't require a bunch of external cables. It doesn't have the umbilical cord that we had before that spanned it out into XLRs or things like that, but a very straightforward connection and capability that way. This one is shown with the additional two network cards. So you've got two other network ports in here, and then the additional audios for expansion for input 3 and 4 that we're shown in that card. And then what's nice, again, a third expansion slot, so we can add more GPIs, GPOs, other types of things that we want to do. If you want to add another audio input for another 2 channels, we've got capabilities here. So what's really slick is we've kind of pivoted on the same platform we've got, but we've added some real key modularity, more expansion. We've added the audio connectors to be able to do that. We've got more capabilities in this box than we've ever had before, and a lot cleaner packaging, a much nicer setup for it. I talked a little bit about the audio connectors, and this is an important thing too, because now we can use standard Cat5, Cat6 wire and RJ45 plugs. What's nice is it's inexpensive. It's inexpensive wire, and it's inexpensive connectors. They're also easy to create these cables without solder, and they're well known. It's recognized. It's adopted for different consoles, routers, and everything else like that. As you see here, I'm kind of showcasing it. These adapters are available from a number of different sources. Right now, one of the things I highlight there is, for example, the guys at Angry Audio, the Studio Hub, wiring configuration, that matches what we've done. What makes it nice is you can have different outputs, different cabling, depending on what your requirements are. Tip ring, sleeve, XLRs. If you want to use unbalanced, you can do it. So it's really kind of a slick thing. They're also something that people always said, hey, the nice thing about XLRs was easy to bypass. These are also easy to bypass. You can use an RJ45 female to female plug or a little bit longer cable, and you can easily bypass it with a Cat5 wire. So really slick being able to do that. Again, much denser and a connector array on that board, making sure that we don't have to expand the chassis size or try to come up with some elaborate thing, and it really works slick. So part of the thing for the connector examples are something like this. If you want to use XLRs, there's a RJ45 to XLR male adapter. There's actually the part number that you would use from Angry Audio. There's a RJ45 male RCA. If you want it on the male side, you have obviously female side if you want to use that. On the AES side, if you're using the XLRs, there's an example of a connector that's used for AES audio input. So really kind of slick things, and you can get these, again, patch panels, a whole array of different things that are now available, make it a lot easier for setting up the connections and being able to do audio in and out of the device with it. Any questions so far? I guess I'll just keep buzzing. So,
Richard Rudman just posted in. Richard Rudman posted a quick question.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm not seeing questions on my side, so I apologize. Could you articulate that?
I can ask my question with audio.
There you go.
Okay. I'm wondering if the modular system is limited to 4 radio inputs.
No. In fact, what a segue. Thank you very much, Richard.
You're welcome.
Without even saying, we're just about there. So on the hardware option, on the expandable one, we can add both. On the EL or EX, we can put the AES module. One thing that's important about this AES module, it's a true digital audio switch. This is not just a simple relay. It syncs to the incoming data rate, so it matches that. If you've got incoming at 44.1, if you've got incoming data at 48, it synchronizes to the incoming data rate so that you've got a clean digital switch. It's not just a simple relay. So that's one of the important things. And both the EL or EX can be expanded with AES now. So what's really slick in the past, if you had the, for example, the DAS-LC, the low-cost unit, you could not add AES audio to it. Now you can on even the lowest price type of configuration. To Richard's question, right there, the EXP EAS module, which allows you to add 2 additional monitoring inputs. So Richard, to that point, we can actually take the DAS-III EX and expand it to 6 inputs.
Okay, that's good. My concern in this continues to be what's going to happen. Whoops, I'm getting feedback. As far as when the internet goes away and when we have loss of sources that are internet dependent. So it looks like you have some provisions to be able to address that concern.
Yes, absolutely. And that's an important thing too. The other thing that's unique about our system is moving even beyond that. If say, I mean, I know that I think Santa Barbara had a requirement for something on the order of 10 or 12 monitoring sources.
Yes.
What's interesting about that is we can link DASDEC to DASDEC, so that if I had 6 inputs on one DASDEC and another 4 on another DASDEC, I can actually link them together using our EASnet protocol, effectively creating a 2 hardware systems, but the outputs all looking at 10 inputs. So I can cascade any number of DASDECs and create a hive, if you will, of multiple inputs, depending on what's going on. Just what the hardware can support. Again, you don't want to try to create something that's way beyond and having a whole bunch of inputs if it's not very, used very often. But in this particular scenario, we can not only go well beyond just the 6 by just cascading and linking them using EASnet. So great question, I appreciate that. Moving on, so the other expansion, I talked a little bit about this, is being able to expand the GPIO. The standard model has 2 inputs and 2 outputs, but we can plug in a board to get 8 additional GPIs and GPOs for a total of 10 in and out on the box, but we also support network-based GPIs and GPOs. So each DASDEC can control up to 32 inputs and outputs, GPIs and GPOs, and they don't all have to be co-located, because as long as I've got it over a network, I can talk to those GPIs and GPOs. We do this a lot in the cable world, being able to trigger remote head ends, sending a contact closure out to a remote site, and being able to do that. And we just look at it inside of our, what we call pool, our GPIO pool. We can control 32 inputs, 32 outputs, using a combination of any ways in which you want to do it, with a cluster of the 2 built into it, and then different network GPIOs that you want to use. And then the other one is the expanded 2 NIC gig. So we can add 2 additional gigabit ports. That gives you 3 completely independent ports. They're non-bridging, which means that the networks don't see each other. So you can make sure you've got isolated traffic. This is really important for guys that are doing either separating their automation systems from the engineering side of the house to maybe the you want to be able to go through a firewall out to iPOS, those kinds of things. So being able to separate that and keep the traffic independent is really kind of an important thing around the configurations and things that we can do. So those are some of the hardware options. Again, AES module is as an option. The EAS, GPIO, and 2 NIC gigs are options on the EX version, the expanded version. So what's interesting, we talked about one of the design goals is what can we do from a software option standpoint? And this is one of the big things is now from a manufacturing standpoint, it actually becomes less costly to include the receiver modules. And so we can add the receiver modules if someone wants to license the box to add those dual tri-band monitor receivers. That means that on board, simple software license key will turn on AM, FM, and NOAA weather receivers on the EL, and on the EX, it will give you 3 radios and the 4th monitoring input. So you can have a separate external receiver, maybe I think in some ones they have like state relay receivers or other things that you can have an input, but this will turn on all 3 radios. And again, you can vary which ones you want to have on, how you want to have the inputs. And what's nice about that, again, is now I eliminate external receivers. I eliminate the wiring and connections from external receivers. As we talked before, we've got them built in so you can see it, and you can actually stream the audio and listen to the receivers at a remote location. So if you want to find out if they're tuned right, we've had some people with the radios, if they want to remotely listen to their own station to make sure it's still on air. If they're, just as a monitoring point, they've used it to tune the receiver, maybe receiver 3 to their own station and make sure that they're actually on air, or use it as a feedback loop to say, hey, if they send out an EAS, guess what? It gets decoded and logged on their DASDEC because it came back in on that third receiver input point. So it's kind of neat being able to do this now as a software element and not doing it as a hardware requirement. The other thing that's unique too is our MPEG-2 now, because we've gotten to a much better processor, faster processor, and also, as I'll talk a little bit more about, a full 64-bit OS, we can now do MPEG in software. So instead of having to require an MPEG hardware encoder option, which occupied a slot, was hardware needed, that meant, it either needed to be installed at the point or gone back to the factory, we can do MPEG as an option. So for video services, again, cable, IPTV, different types of things that require a stream output for the audio and for the video, we can do it now in a software mode, and that is really slick. So it saves a lot of hassle in being able to do that and being able to turn on the MPEG encoder. That also means that even the DAS-EL can do the MPEG software output. And beyond that, we've got support for a lot of other software options. These are not wholly unique, but these are things that we've had for a while. EASnet, which I talked about, being able to link box to box. And EASnet is actually used by guys like RCS for their automation systems, wide orbit on their automation side, so that we can link. It really was designed for what we refer to as box to box communication. I want to communicate EAS from this box to this box. Very simple, very straightforward idea. And we developed EASnet with that in mind. Again, this box-to-box communication. Extending EASnet is EASnet AEA. AEA stands for Advanced Emergency Information. I know it doesn't sound right, AEA versus AEI, but this is the protocol that is in ATSC-III for having additional information about alert events. Typically not EAS specifically. In other words, it's not going to be that first alert, that first bell ringer, but information that is going to be adjunct to it. So if I want to send out in an ATSC-III format, if I want to add to a particular event, a evacuation map, a plume map, a child abduction type of thing to show the child and have that available, ATSC-III allows the capability to have that as a kind of an underlying data service that receivers can pick it up and see the information if a viewer wants to look at that. So being able to support those more advanced emergency alert functions, emergency information functions are critical to that. And again, our devices can support that. The ones that we will be showcasing at NAB, we've got a number of different interfaces with different guys showing the EASnet AEA, feeding their different devices. Again, we could talk about that if anyone's going to be there. We also support MPEG-Dash, so for unique streaming outputs, if you want to do different OTT things. And Barry, this kind of ties into another unique thing that Evoca does. Evoca has a very interesting hybrid model of both supporting an over-the-air ATSC-III, but also supporting an OTT platform. They have a little receiver box that you install, has an HDMI output to go into that. That receiver box not only has the ATSC-III tuner, but also has a network connection. And you don't know as a user whether you're watching the content coming from an internet feed or from an ATSC-III feed. Guess what? The neat thing about it is the user experience for an emergency alert is identical. Whether it's OTT or whether it's EAS, over the air type of stuff, it doesn't matter. It's an identical thing. And that's something that Evoca has done that's really unique. We also support, obviously, in the cable world, what's known as SET-18, our omnilingual, being able to do multiple languages. Some people are familiar with that, but going well beyond the English, Spanish, or French as we do in Canada, but into other things like Somali, Hmong. We've got Italian, German. So we can do a whole bunch of different languages depending on the particulars that someone wants to do. We've got areas with Custom Message Pro, where we can do unique messages that are going, beyond just standard message kinds of things, where you're creating custom messages. And the one that we, Ed kind of referred a little bit about this, is the thing that we call TDX, or Textual Data Exchange. This is something that we pioneered many, many years ago as a way to add a little snippet of information inside the inside of the EAS envelope. When I call the envelope, the headers, the wonk, 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 the attention tone, then you've got the audio package, and you've got the end of message tone. Inside that audio envelope, where we put all of that information, if we can put some additional stuff, which we've already shown and we've proven with TDX to be able to do that and not disrupt any other devices, we can put additional data that we could use to help mitigate things like message flooding. If we can identify more messages and have another parameter in which we can deduplicate, then we can do a lot more in improving exactly what we're talking about, in being able to define, hey, this message has already gone out, or we've received this message, we don't need to transmit it again. Really some important things to be able to do that. And again, our box has TDX built into it. You've got the capabilities to have it, and we really want to support that. I'll let Ed kind of talk a little bit more about that as we go through it. So in looking at this, when we take our product list, as I outlined before, we now have kind of reduced everything down into 2 models. What we called the LC before is really now in our EL series. There's not a lot of expansion capabilities. Oops, not a lot of expansion capabilities on that. And the other, oops, sorry, so the EX replaces all the other models. Again, configurations are based on the different hardware and software options, but now, because we've got more flexibility in our software capable things, about just being able to example, turn on the radio keys, that kind of stuff, makes it a whole lot easier to work with it on that. So when we look at it, we reduced the number of models? Check, we have. Have we reduced the number of internal components and connectors? Oh, absolutely. We have definitely done a good job on that. Reduce the number of hardware options? Yes. I mean, again, being able to do MPEG encoding, being able to do and not have to have different radio or different modules, different ways to do that. We've definitely done it. Have we improved the audio connection? I think handedly we have improved the audio connection. It's no longer that terminal strip that we got slammed with a lot. This is a much better and a more future thinking way in which we've handled audio. We've also done HD video, the HDMI output, and including audio on that HDMI channel. We really have gotten some great things to be able to do that. So now we've got that. So check on that one. Springboard, absolutely. Again, the multi-function front panel control and another third expansion slot that we can add other things to in the future gives us a lot of capability. Really, all of this came together, and we've received a new FCC Part 11 certification. So we went through it and said, this is a new enough model that we just weren't going to rest on our laurels with the old one. We got a new FCC Part 11 certification. That's the registration number for it right there, the R8VG3 DAS-01. And we've also done, obviously, all the Part 15 testing for emissions in that. So this product is ready to go. A couple of different things around it. We've got it. Any questions right now? I'm going to use that as an opportunity to take a quick swig.
Things a lot of stations used to like to do was to have a display, sort of a one line but moving line of words. I see you have that HDMI. Is that what you're going to drive as a screen with audio and video?
Yes. And in fact, what we do on the video output part, typically, if you're not tied to another device, we give you a full screen slate. So it's not just a little crawl, but you can put it. And a number of stations have done this. Television stations have done it, obviously, but various other stations would switch they might have a monitor in the station. Again, the talent's there, or they're looking at it, or they've got something they can pop up there. By the way, we can also, through the serial port, drive things like little LED display signs. So if they wanted to put that in their different areas, we can drive display signs. We've supported that from a long time with different Beta Bright and other companies that do LED display signs. So yeah, we've got capabilities to be able to do that.
David Carwile says, does the new software work, or what can it do in the previous DASDEC-II generation equipment?
Does the new software work?
Does it work on old gear?
Yeah, I'm gonna take you through that because as part of that, I think that we'll talk a little bit about that. So, Dave, once again, you guys, I'm thinking that someone got my ahead of time because Richard came right in with some good stuff. A little bit of
Harold, we're getting some feedback from you. Not quite sure why, but I've just muted you because you're feeding back.
All right, that's interesting. Since I've pushed to talk here, but I'll go ahead and mute when I stop. I did have a couple of questions. First off, on the thing of repeating alerts, it seems like in broadcast, you may still want the repeating alert because somebody tuned in 5 minutes ago and didn't hear the one that you broadcast 15 minutes ago. So I wonder if that's an issue. And on the receiver side, it looks like it's separate hardware for each receiver. It would be interesting to do an SDR and do all that in software, but I don't want to redesign your product. So I'll mute now. Thank you.
No, you know what? Again, when you look at SDR, same kind of thing. What we're talking about is you still have to have real world interface. You got to have the front end elements and be able to do that. This actually provides the way that we've done the board is I won't say anything else beyond that, but the capabilities are well designed for supporting things outside of AM, FM, and NOAA weather. So let me jump into a little bit on the version 5. Dave, hold your question and we'll talk a little bit about the on that stuff. So our version 5 software, really what we are looking to do is substantially streamline the pages. We know that the old series, and I've kind of told people the nice thing about the DASDEC is how much it can do. Kind of the downside of the DASDEC is how much it can do. And again, a lot of the screens, and we've been really focused over the years just putting more and more features into it. And we kind of said, what I kind of worked out with my children as they were going through school, I said, get the content down first. We'll work on formatting later. In other words, what's important is get the content, get the features and the functions, and then let's work on formatting. Right now, we're saying, look, we need to kind of take a step and work on some of the formatting. So our whole thing with version 5 is streamlining the pages, less visual clutter, more contemporary colors, and it's based on our Halo product, which is what we use. It's our cloud. Halo is our cloud-based EAS management tool. So if you've got multiple EAS devices, hundreds, one of our customers has several hundred of our EAS devices out there, and they can manage it all through one console interface. Multiple engineers can log into it, see what's going on in their regions, alerts, everything else like that. So we based it on our Halo design. We also upgraded the OS, and Dave, to your point here, this is where the question comes in on support. Version 5 is a full 64-bit operating system. That means that the underlying CPU must be 64-bit in order to support that. The early DASDEC-IIs going to about 2014 were 32-bit only. So there is an application note on our website. You can look at it. You can find out what version of CPU you have, which means that there are going to be the really old versions of DASDECs that will not be able to support it because they only have a 32-bit CPU. So that's, to answer that question very directly, it really is going to be dependent on what your current hardware. The DASDEC-II has multiple series. So we had the DASDEC-II as the model name, but underlying that, we actually had a couple of series. So back into, I think it was around 2014, and I don't have the exact dates, but right around early 2014 is when we switched over to the 64-bit, 32-bit, 64-bit CPUs, but you can check and verify and find out compatibility with it. There'll be, again, a reference to an application note and different things to be able to do that. But being able and moving forward on a 64-bit operating system is critical because obviously that's the way that the development tools are going. It's the way that more security updates, patches, you can't get them in 32-bit world. You can't do some of the development in a 32-bit world. You've got to go to 64-bit. That's where you're going to be. Also, all of the updates, patches, other elements that you have, as we talked about, security is an important consideration. That's got to be in 64-bit. We've also updated the web server, which has more security enhancements in it, so that again, the interface is a web browser interface, but you've got to make sure you've got a more current one, because that's the first foray that someone might look at to try to quote unquote hack into your system, be able to do that. So these things are really critical to pieces and parts of it. We're also improving the email functionality and cleaning up some of the things. Our email tool was really slick. If you get we could actually send you an email on a decoded alert. That means it's not forwarded or anything, but immediately if a decoded alert that came in, National Weather Service, whatever, on a decode, not on a forward or anything else, but actually a decode could send an email. But the email was a little bit non-selective, meaning the fact that it was a group event. So if it was a decoded event, you would send to this group of people. If it was a forwarded event, it would send to this group of people. What we're looking at on the email is making it much more selective. So for example, if I get a National Weather Service thing, I can send it immediately to Dave Stewart and nobody else gets it. If I get something else that I want to have, let's say station management get a particular alert, or let's say my weather director or meteorologist in a group, I can be much more selective about who gets what events and when. Also including things like our monthly reports. So the DASDEC actually summarizes a monthly or a weekly report of all the events, and we can send them to different people. By the way, I've always said one of those people should be eas@mystation.org or .com. You should always set up a email account for your system to send the logs and the events into that. It's a very, very nice thing to be able to always say, you've got your logs backed up they automatically go into an email account. So it's very simple, very straightforward. But in version 5, we're going to really improve that functionality and make it much more selective and unique things to be able to do that. We've got some new monitoring views on the login page, some status information that's going to be there. It's really kind of cool to be able to see that. And there's going to be a whole series right now, obviously when version 5, which I'm going to show you a couple of screenshots, but we're going to continue to improve on this with adding more and more pages that have more of this updated functionality. So what you see is one of the things about, again, consolidation. The gone is the mustard yellow background, all the frames and things like that. We didn't want to kind of create a complete wholesale change, because people that have familiarity with the product, we don't want to alienate them. Also, there's a lot of functionality in the product that we don't want to just leave by the wayside, but really let's make it easier to navigate, get rid of a lot of the superfluous text, and get rid of the kind of the spacing elements that you've got. So now in the top, we actually automatically have all of the information in the upper top condensed down with what the device is. There's the back, there's refresh, there's the oplog button, what software version you're currently running, the configuration that you're currently running, time and date stamps, who's logged into it. If there's other error messages and things like that, we'll put them right over in here, and then a logout function. So we're using iconography instead of just text and words like that. We've cleaned up the spacing. We've done other things. Again, if you've got different parts and pieces in here, got someone messaging me, alert events and all the different setups. One thing that we've done is, for example, on the audio side, what used to be 4 different tabs, we've condensed down into 2, inputs and outputs. So right here, I can go to my audio input. So if you look at it, setup, audio inputs, what selector, I'm using my internal radios. I label the source, WXYZ I've got here. It says that source is turned on. There's my frequency. I select the band, what frequency I want. If I want to scale it, I can do level adjust, everything very simple. This page has been seriously reduced in complexity. So it's really kind of nice. And this is just one example that we're doing to really refine it and make this thing a whole lot easier to see and do. One of the other things too is on the alert events, incoming decoded alerts, where you're going to be able to see the information. We now have split up kind of the source and the channels and some other things like that. So one that I really like is this. When you're looking at the forwarded alerts, so this is alert events, forwarded alerts, I've got now a condensed version. And so it's very simple to see all the alerts and the events. Again, this is not an active screenshot, just a snippet, but I can also select this show event detail and expand it. So if I want to look at a condensed version, I can look at it that way. If I want to look at an expanded version. And by the way, it's very simple to get a report out of this thing. You just click the button here that says get text version. This is going to be improved with a couple of other things here about being able to just click here to get the log right out of it. So it's very simple. You can define what range, like right now it's set up for the current week of alerts. You can set up a range and say, give me the alerts between this day and that date, and it will print out a report for you. So really some big things that we're doing here on the V5 stuff and the software, being able to, again, I think significantly streamline it and improve the overall look. So what's our rollout plans? First official announcement today. You guys just got it. There it is in the BDR web luncheon. So we've now made our first official announcement. We will be kind of having the public debut of actual hardware and everything at the NAB show. If anyone's going to be at the show, we will be at booth in the new Western Hall, 8617. If you haven't already, you can use that guest pass code, log in, and you get a free guest pass. You're welcome to come by, see us, take a look at the actual hardware, put your hands on it if you want to. We look forward to doing that. We will be shipping this product starting late Q2. It's going to be kind of the end of June when we're going to be starting to ship that. There's a lot of different things about getting the message out to our dealers and other things with pricing. And that's one of the key things too, is the pricing is really in line with our current offerings. We're not looking that we're going to be jumping prices and going all over the place. We understand what our price range needs to be effective in this particular market. And the idea with being able to reduce some of the costs, features that we've got, but add some functionality into it, we expect it to be in line with the current offerings. So with that,
does the system have an included FTP feature, or is it an added expense? Mike Morrell would like to know.
We actually support SCP, FTP, HTTPS, all of those things under EASnet. So in the typical scenario, it is you have to add the EASnet license key.
Okay. Richard, you have one you wanted to ask about warning centers?
Yes. In your warning center products, I'm wondering if you have given any thought to making it easier or helping the rest of the industry, including third-party vendors, to be able to manage alerting through multiple warning tools, or whether that's still an issue as it is in many warning centers.
Bill, do you want me to grab that one?
Well, there's one thing I would say is the fact that and I'll let you kind of do a little bit more on that, Ed, but the big thing is, again, and I'm going to kind of sound like a broken record, but EASnet was designed for box-to-box communications. So if you want to use, another resource to maybe author an event, we can accept it either as EASnet or as a cap input to be able to generate, let's say from a cap in to EAS out. We can do those kinds of things. Ed, if you want to continue.
Yeah, let me go a step further. It's not just box-to-box communications, but EASnet is a protocol and a de facto industry standard, at least within cable IPTV. But it's a standard, as a protocol for box to virtual box and box to cloud communications. So if I'll leave all the brand names out, nobody gets free advertising. But if you've got one of these hosted, if you're an emergency management center, if you've got one of these hosted services that may not directly originate EAS, and you want to do that, then you could do an EASnet session, assuming that vendor is willing to work with us, EASnet between their system and ours, and we would do the EAS thing and do the CAP thing. Or EASnet for redundancy between the two systems. That can be done as well. We are working with two major manufacturers who have adopted EASnet, but those are mainly in lab settings. Having said that, one thing also that's on my mind, backups. And backups to your backups. I wish Adrienne Abbott was on the phone, but I read her comment that apparently their hosted solution went down for a long time, for 6 or 8 hours. Their hosted service, alert origination service for the state.
Code Red.
Well, don't want to point any fingers or names, but it went down for a long time. People have been rebutting me specifically that it's the cloud, it's invulnerable, it's redundant. Well, there you go. Major vendor of mass notification systems offline across the country, not just Nevada, for 8 hours. It happens. It happens. It happened to iPaws a couple of times in the early days. So no finger pointing, but smart engineering, smart architecture would be implementing backups and backups to your backups. One, and I'll make a sales pitch, one really easy, cheap solution is to have a DAS EOC in your pocket when you need it, when the hosted service is down. If the hosted service is down, you can use a DAS EOC directly to send a message to iPaws versus CAP. If internet is down totally and CAP's offline, then a DAS EOC sends EAS, backups to backups to backups.
We have a question here about trade-up program, but I want to ask first, because what you just mentioned. On the front panel, is there an indication that the iPaws is connected? And if not, will the Generation 3 send out an email saying CAP is offline?
It does that right now. I mean, our current unit, and remember too, we do that with a level of hysteresis. You can't just say, you know, it's down for a second or anything. We do some evaluation and look at it and say that and not just iPods, but any kind of digital input. If we can't get connectivity to that over a period of so many samples, we will send out an email saying that you've lost connectivity to it. There's also an alert that comes up on the user screen. It is something that we would look at doing on that display. Again, having more lines of communication, being able to do that is a definite way to add that kind of functionality. It's
Okay.
not in the G3 right now. It's in the current software, being able to do that as an email out that you've lost connectivity. But also, again, I just want to point out that there's a lot more thought that we put into that, because it's not just, okay, it's down for a second, it's down for so many pulse cycles, and then when it comes up, it's got to be up for so many pulse cycles. So again, there's some hysteresis that we look at to make sure that we really are up or we really are down.
But the key point is that if you come in to the room and you look at the front screen, it'll tell you instantly if it's connected or not.
It's not in the G3 right now, but the capability is there, absolutely. But the question about email is already in the box.
Okay. The question was raised by several folks. How does this new model fit into the trade-up program? I'm currently waiting for a brand new DASDEC-II through the trade-up program, but now I'm seeing the death of DASDEC-II.
Well, it's not the death, and that's one of the things that's important is the DASDEC-II is, and again, the new ones are all 64-bit, so they will support the version 5 software and going forward, which is great. That's one of the big things around it. And anyone that was in the uptrade program that we had before, that they were automatically enrolled in the software assurance plan, which means they're going to get version 5 at no additional cost. So they've already got that built into it, and the capabilities are there to support it. The things that G3 provide is going forward a little bit, again, more modular functionality and maybe that front panel display. We've actually looked at and this hasn't been fleshed out yet, but we've looked at, you know, what we're going to be doing. The current models will map, as I kind of indicated before in that one chart, the current models, and depending on the model that you had, it maps into a configuration that is based on probably the EX version. So if we get to the point where your uptrade is there and you want to go with this, we knew make an announcement about G3, you may want to go that way. It's going to be a little bit longer delay to get it, but we would definitely work with you on having a G3 version versus a G2. We would just make it the same configuration. But again, don't worry about the fact that it's a death of the model, because again, our big thing is that we're supporting those, because as long as they've got the 64-bit processor, we can put all the new software on it.
I'd like to broach the topic of support. One of the things that has been said was that when you all came out with a request for $500 and some to upgrade, and in some cases 2 times, people said, wait a minute, this is going to be awfully expensive. The fact is, of course, that this is the first time that digital alert systems had asked for an upgrade fee. And now to moderate this, you have a yearly option as well.
That's true. And really what we've done is we've looked at that and said, instead of having to figure out, okay, you know, this is what I've got to, budget, or it becomes a surprise and say, oh, hey, you know, new features or new functions are coming out. The real thing that we wanted to do was say, how do we put this together in a nicer way? And the idea of the software assurance plan was just that. Look, don't worry about it. Let's just take a very simple, we're talking about $200 a year, and whatever new software versions come out, no matter what version, you would automatically get that software. And so it's an easy way to budget a simple cost for it. And this is not too, it's not over the top. We're talking about, 50 cents a day at best, $16 a month roughly for kind of making sure that you are up to date with all the latest. Again, notwithstanding, whatever version is. If we come out with version 5, come out with the next version, everything, they would automatically be enrolled and get that update. So the support and everything that we have, and again, people would say, I'd like to do this at no cost. I want to have my, my old unit, but also recognize that we're not the only ones now. Everyone else realizes that we're not necessarily rolling a whole bunch of boxes and how you could mask the engineering efforts and everything else because everyone's buying new hardware or replacing it at a great rate and that you've got it. It's a way to really support the industry, support the customers overall without asking too much and doing it in a nice enough way that says, okay, look, we can put it together because engineering costs. I mean, all you guys out there that are engineers, I'm sure you're not doing it for free. There's a price that comes into the knowledge that you have, the information that you can provide to people that engage your services, whether an employer or as a contractor for it. And so, in order to be able to do that, in order to be able to add these features, in order to be able to do some of the key things when you've got a security function or even phone support. We don't charge for phone support. If someone has a question, they can contact us, get on our team. Our team can log in on the box with you, kind of show you what to do, help you set things up if you've got a particular issue. So we don't think that it's outside of that, but we don't want to have the surprises. And I think that's what a lot of people have is, wow, all of a sudden it became a surprise. But if you can budget a simple $200 a year, I don't think it's asking for much. And it's a easy way to do that. Some companies have actually masked it by saying you have to have this in order to get any support or any updates. And we're just saying, look, the simple thing for the software assurance plan is just that, making sure that you've got the latest and greatest. It's there, it's available. You're getting contacted. When hey, this new software is updated, go get it.
I think Bill just raised a really important point. It gets to overall industry trends, especially when you're dealing with cloud-based products or hybrid products. Everybody else in the industry has pretty hefty management or maintenance costs or licensing costs, and EAS isn't even approaching that. EAS products aren't even approaching that. Well, maybe with one exception. On the one hand, we have had. Let's see. The last time we had a paid update or fee-based update was 2018. Quite a while ago. And one of our competitors also in I guess at a 2019 timeframe, they also had a paid update, which was within $100 of what we charge. So very similar. A third company, as Bill was alluding, requires a very substantial annual maintenance contract. So their initial device cost may be very low, but boy, you catch up and pay exponentially more over time. And if you stop paying, I don't think it bricks, but you don't get the support, you don't get the regulatory updates, nothing. So very different business models, even within the EAS industry, but you do need to bear, I think the EAS industry is finally maturing. It's not just a bunch of guys in a garage building boxes. It hasn't been that for a decade. These are companies building serious product, which, and maybe if we have time, we'll talk to very serious applications. Not just for EAS, but for advanced services as well. And let me tease it that way with something maybe Bill wants to take up or segue it. Why do we introduce a new box? Why take the effort to build a new EAS platform? Bill alluded to it. There is much more that we are starting to do with this content management appliance. It's probably the wrong way to put it, but with this platform than just plain old EAS. You're hearing about an ATSC 3.0. More may come from us in other sectors. We're feeding OTT. There's a lot more, and it's not just EAS. There's a lot of newsroom integration. So totally, for us at least, it's a totally different proposition in terms of where we're going.
All right, the question came in, Bill, again. Will there be a cost to upgrade to 5.0?
That depends. Again, it depends on whether you are a member of the software assurance plan already, or if you're not, then there will be a fee. It hasn't been defined on what that fee will be, but if you're not a member of the software assurance plan, then there would be a charge.
But huge caveat, you don't have to upgrade to 5.0 if you don't need the features.
Yep.
Another manufacturer, just by comparison, no names, but be nice, but another company took the approach that if a required update was in a paid software upgrade, so if you did not upgrade, you would no longer be able to interface with iPods. We've never done anything like that. Within a software series, all regulatory upgrades, by and large, are at no cost within a software series. Important point. If the FCC rushes through a rulemaking and we're able to put into 4.0, we will put in a 4.0. If the FCC makes one of their big changes and it's after we issued 5.0, well, we can't go backwards. It'll be in 5.0. But if you already have 5.0, there will be no additional charge for any even major stuff the FCC is contemplating. And if you've read the notice of rulemaking, notice of inquiry, the FCC could be contemplating some really staggeringly large changes to EAS.
Great question.
Any other questions from the floor? You can either speak up, unmute your mic with a space bar, alternate A, put it in the chat box, or raise your virtual hand. We're happy to hear from everyone that's with us today.
Well,
I'll ask this question based on the little preliminary screen you showed us. It mentions the level of your radio. One of your competitors, as an example, has a dynamic display that shows the level of modulation. You showed a number and a red block. So I'm going to guess that when you got the right number, the block would turn green.
Yep, that's correct. In fact, we actually have red, green, yellow. So depending on what the level is to make sure that it's correct. And basically what it does is just gives you an idea that it's clean enough for us to properly decode it from the RF side.
So if it gets too high, then it goes back to yellow and then red.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
And again, that's kind of that initial setup stuff so that you've got the capability to be able to dial it in, and we can listen to it. As I said, we can monitor the audio, so you can listen to it without being in the equipment room or anything else, but monitor it yourself and listen and verify that it's tuned to the right station and that you can hear it properly. So it's a secondary way to be able to do that.
Very good.
So
do you know exactly where in the West Wing you'll be?
Booth is W8617. It's actually close to all of the ATSC-III pavilion. That particular area, I think it's on the far north side of the hall. It's an interesting place because I've obviously never been in the West Hall before, so I'm gonna kind of play it by ear and work with that. So, but if anyone's going to be there, we'd really appreciate it. Stop by, see us, again, be able to see the product. We can give you a more dynamic V5 presentation, kind of show you exactly what's going on with that, rather than just some simple screenshots.
Okay.
I wasn't sure what my connectivity was going to be, so that's why I wanted to do it this way.
Good. Rolf?
Yeah, I just wanted to get back to what Ed mentioned at the very beginning. The idea of a message ID is something I've certainly occurred to me. I'm sure it's occurred to many. It's funny, the very first time I read an article about blockchain, it occurred to me that unique and traceable message IDs would be a really valuable thing. So just pass that out there, that if we go through the trouble of creating a message ID, something that's traceable might be a pretty good idea.
I'm 100% in agreement. And it doesn't even have to be as anything as elegant or complex as blockchain broadcasting, but to create a globally unique message ID within the IPAWS system should not be difficult. I mean, you can create a globally unique user ID for each message originator. By extension, you can create a globally unique message ID, and doesn't have to be long. You can all, I mean, so another one of our competitors is going on about, you know, needing to hash all these things because it's going to be so long. No, a message ID, a unique message ID for the number of EAS events out there, EAS messages going through IPAWS is not enormous. We're not talking about millions of messages going through IPAWS, not even close to that. Mm-hmm. Same with major weather events. Stamping creating a globally unique event ID for a major thunderstorm or tornado system. So you can deconflict, you know, that, okay, I'm getting all these messages and they all correspond to this message ID. So now, okay, maybe this is awkward, but now the event ID will now override all the other filtering parameters. So, you know, okay, now I know this is a duplicate and I'm not going to air it. That's kind of what we proposed. This has been in FCC discussions for, I got to see 8 years now, 8 years. And very condensed 8 years of discussion into a couple of seconds. We've proposed a capability called Textual Data Exchange, TDX, Bill referenced on the slide. That's the ability to include a short amount of ancillary data within the audio, the voice frame of an EAS message. So it'd be brap, 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 8-second attention signal. I think we need to address that attention signal. It's all 8 seconds is a long time, but brap, 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 8-second attention signal, and then a couple of short bursts of TDX data. Doesn't have to be 3 times. We've had this in the field in places like Nebraska in limited deployment. A single burst for each element should be sufficient. But if we're only talking a couple of characters, a couple of character strings for each ID, again, very little information. The challenge comes in, the real challenge to me comes in the need to update NWS weather systems to use this. The way we've presented it is if an alert originator has an old TFT or SAGE or whatever, they're sending an alert, they don't have TDX capability, no harm, no foul. The EAS box just ignores it. If you have an EAS box that can't cope with TDX, no harm, no foul, more or less. I mean, it just is ignored. It's just a little few tones in the background. If you do have TDX support, then you can do cool things like deconflict by event, deconflict by the cap message ID. Now you can really correspond the cap message ID to the cap message, and that's critical. This gets to what Richard Rudman had raised very accurately some years ago: message flooding. Why? Why does it happen? Because the National Weather Service systems, and this is not an accusation, it's just what happens. National Weather Service transmitters create a different timestamp than the cap version of the message. Therefore, they are distinct. But if we put in an event ID and a cap ID, we deconflict, and Richard's great issue, and it's a serious issue, is solved, as well as a lot of other things. That also means if we solve that issue, now we could put NWS alert messages in cap format on the IPAWS open server with all that extra text and information. Another huge issue solved. TDX, I mean, we've developed it. We'd like people to say thank you, and that's about it. We are not asking for licensing fees. Bill can stop me when I go off the rails here. We filed in the FCC as far back as 2005. Bill's father, Bruce Robertson, filed in 2005, and we have not changed our stance. We are not looking for any fees or royalties or anything from any EAS manufacturer. Period. End of story. There should be no economic reason, except for not invented here, why another EAS manufacturer shouldn't take this up and solve a couple of critical problems. This is a lot easier than what I'm segueing to a lot of things. So stop me if I'm going into the stuff we haven't reviewed or you haven't read. But the FCC is raising a notice of inquiry. Should we reinvent the entire EAS architecture? Why not? And everybody on this, every broadcaster in America, every cable system can buy a new EAS box. That's a horrible idea. That's a horrible solution. Why don't we just do a real easy patch to the system, include these 2 data elements? We've already got it in the DASDEC. Okay, 80% of the TV industry can already support it.
I'm going to ask you a question about that in just a second, but Bill, Renee wants to know when you're going to start taking orders for the DASDEC-III.
Probably Sunday, but for sure. No, we are not. We won't be shipping them. We're just at the very, very edges of again, product introduction. We'll be getting the rest of the stuff organized. I would say that we're probably, again, I'm not trying to be flippant, but shortly after the NAB show, we will have all of the things to be able to accept orders for DASDEC-IIIs.
Okay. Ed, we kind of broached this briefly before everybody was able to log in, but I'm gonna raise it again now, based on what you just got talking about with the textual opportunities here in the message ID. One of the biggest problems that broadcasters have are these 2-minute marathon audio from the National Weather Service or some sheriff's department. Right. Is there some way in the many committees of which you are a part and trying to get the idea across, is there any at all interest in getting out a concise 15 or 20-second message for broadcast use?
Well, we already have that. I mean, that's the reason why there's a 2-minute message. If you want less than 2 minutes, now we're really starting to squeeze things. We have a lot of emergency management customers, and the consensus is that we're not going to issue a full 2 minutes of voice. We're not. If you can't get your point across in 30 seconds, you're sending the wrong message.
But this is what the Weather Service does continually.
I can't speak to the National Weather Service. That's a whole different.
No, I'm just talking from the standpoint of the committee. I mean, this is where the
I guess
are going to come from. The FCC is listening to you folks.
Yeah. So let's take this a couple of different directions. Okay. Let's look at EAS as part of a broader information architecture, including value-added services. I'll focus on TV, then I'll go to radio and HD radio. TV. So there are alerts that are critical, life-threatening. You don't care it interrupts Oprah. It's for the good of your community. Tsunami warning, tornado warning, chlorine gas leak going right through a residential neighborhood. I mean, anybody in their right mind, I'm going to be blunt, maybe this is my allergy medication coming in right now, but I'm going to be really blunt. Any responsible broadcaster as a community service is going to put that type of alert on air without hesitation, because people are in harm's way. And let's focus on the National Weather Service. A tornado warning right there. Yes, a tsunami warning. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in my mind, broadcasters should have no compunction about taking up a couple of seconds of their airtime with the tones and the call.
That is true. But if the Weather Service comes on and says, for the counties of Monroe, Leffler, Bangam up, whatever, and it goes on for a minute of the county names, instead of saying there is a tornado reported 15 miles northwest of Tucson, that's all you have to say. People know where the city is. They don't know what the county names are, especially if they're driving across the country.
Well, a couple of different, so a couple of different things. Broadcast is broadcast. It's the shotgun. Everybody gets it in your area. Okay, that's EAS. I'm sorry, EAS is EAS. So I hear what you're saying, but the EAS alerts are kind of the last line of information. You are desperately trying to warn everybody in the area that something really bad is happening or is about to happen. We have proposed to the FCC that they at least allow us to modify the textual sentence in an EAS sentence to change its presentation. And you can read it in our filing, the Notice of Proposed Rulemaking filing. We've asked them we've recommended that they change the format of the sentence, they get the critical information up front. Right now, all those counties are way up front, put everything at the end. And you can just tune out and go to something else during the 57 counties, or wrong number, but the 20 counties over there. But the critical information up front, that's a short, effective emergency management sentence in the EAS sentence. Okay, that's one possible solution. The second is repurposing non-life-threatening alert messages into auxiliary or ancillary services, ATSC 3.0, just as an example. a severe thunderstorm warning is actually an interesting piece of data. It's content. We're all in the content business, even us in digital alert system. We're in the content dissemination business. If we take that severe storm warning, fog warning, pick a warning you really don't want to put on there, it's intrusive. The infamous blue alert, which none of us know what it's for most of the time. Instead of going over there as an EAS crawl in ATSC-3.0, we, digital alert systems, provide the ability to repurpose that into an advanced emergency information message, which becomes an app-based message on your OTT system, your tablet, your TV screen, whatever's connected to ATSC-3.0. Big hidden story there. The eyeball's now moving off the idiot box in the living room, as somebody once called it elegantly to me, moving off the big screen in the living room to other platforms. ATSC-3 follows that. The alerts follow those, but not as EAS, as this interactive emergency information service. HD Radio, if you read Xperi's filings, seems to be hinting they might be able to do something similar. We'll see, but that would be cool. Now, even radio could in some manner present alerts and urgent information that's not the total takeover of your audio experience or the banner imposition on your screen. It's a different way of looking, and this might be a challenge. Now we're going to start merging engineering and programming and management to talk about this. Urgent information is a holistic business, but in TV, it does make sense. EAS alerts are a form of content. They're relevant for the newsroom. They're relevant for these OTC services. They're value added. And I'm going to say something controversial. When they're outside of EAS, they may even be a business value proposition, i.e. they're monetizable. The weather company does it all the time. With targeted advertising, what ATSC-III is talking about, there's no reason you couldn't deftly attach some form of monetization, commercial, targeted ads, to this.
Go ahead. I'm going to step in and address kind of some additional things. So a lot of the stuff, and recognize where Ed is, and Barry, you kind of pointed this out, Ed is on a number of committees in a number of different areas in ATSC-III, CISRIC committees, the FCC. He is really a wealth of knowledge across that, and can help. Again, he propagates our thinking and everything else into these forums and be able to try to do that, and he can help customers, with that same thing, to bring in ideas and make sure that they're available. But I want to address two current real world things.
Before you do, let me ask one question and make a comment, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
Question number one, Gary wants to know, how long will you continue to sell the current DASDEC-II?
We are going to probably end of life the DASDEC-II. When I say end of life or end of sales of that unit, when we come out with the G3, which looks like it's going to be end of June.
So you're limited to pretty much stock on hand.
Yep. I mean, from a timing standpoint, that's because we want to start cutting over to that particular thing. So we will have support. We always hold back a number of elements and everything for support. So if there's, since we have warranty things and obligations with the devices to be able to maintain that, but from an actual selling new product, it's probably going to terminate around the end of June.
Good. So again, stock on hand. Here's the thing, and when I bring this up, it's not to point at you or to Ed or any specific aspect, and it's almost an appeal to all you folks that are watching us right now. There is a major problem with EAS in that GMs and program directors don't talk to engineers. The managers of the stations, the emergency managers in the field, they don't talk to us. The Weather Service has its own protocol. And of course, then you have the manufacturers trying to keep up with us. And I think DASDEC has done a great job in putting in the features that are necessary. Question comes, is there something the industry can do, Ed, as part of these committees, if everybody that's watching us right now wrote a letter to the FCC saying, give us 15-second alerts, would it have any impact at all?
Yes, if I can Yes, I think it would, possibly. Let's take one thing, scissor committees. I will admit to have kind of tuned out and stopped participating in the last scissor committee. Why? It, as usual, devolved into me arguing with my competitor. That's it. And it's boring even for me. So you guys on the call, and whether 49 of you, used to be 43 a couple minutes ago, 43 people on this call, any number of you could and should be involved in a scissor committee. And at least to monitor, to get your 2 cents in as an SEC chair. I mean, I know it's tedious, but this is where the policy work happens, and your participation, I think, like the old hack goes, democracy doesn't work if you don't vote, if you don't participate. With the FCC, would 43 notes to the FCC work? Well, yes. I saw Richard shaking his head. No. Yes, it might work if there was a singular, realistic plan we could all buy into, and frankly, rammed it down the path.
There's actually much more than 49 because we have a whole bunch on the YouTube live stream.
Yeah, sorry, I posted this on LinkedIn.
So the point is really trying to see if there's a way to get people together to do something, and where the best place to do this would be.
With the FTC, I think they look for unique comments that bring original ideas in rather than form letters. So I think that's more effective if people actually have something to contribute.
I agree with that completely, Tom. What I had in mind was really something more like a joint filing.
Yeah.
If the FCC sees a letter written by 100 broadcast entities, plus some, if not all, of the EAS manufacturers, that would be phenomenal. Yeah. I love working with the NAB. They are phenomenal people, Kelly Williams and Sam Matheny. But they're challenged in that they've got to go one way with TV and the other one with radio, and radio tends to speak really loud with EAS. So, I mean, I think there needs to be an internal industry discussion with NAB. What do we want to do with this EAS thing? EAS is important. It can't go away, even if it's Cold War era. Boy, the Cold War sure has come back, hasn't it? But, now we've got all these advanced technologies. How to merge these into a coherent policy statement from NAB. And I don't think NAB is fair to saddle this all on NAB. I think, it would be a great idea for them to convene everybody into their own version of a CISRIC and talk this through. Richard, you had mentioned many times the need for a new partnership for public warning.
Well, if I could take a few seconds to talk about a couple of things. One is my thought on my private message to you, asking for a couple of paragraphs as a core for looking at your idea about the 2 EAS tags. I do have a mailing list that I developed for SECC chairs that has actually Gary, Tim and I have worked on that in the past. I'd like to see if we could get other chairs maybe to sign on to a joint filing or letter. I think that's a possibility. I think that might have the most impact right now. But this whole issue of message flooding, and it became actually Adrian and I have been having ongoing discussions with Tim Schott at Weather Service about this. And the best that they've been able to come up with is the divisions allowed by changing the first digit of the FIPS code. And that's not good enough, but it's better than nothing. So I think if the FCC would listen, I'd like to get the state chairs behind this.
I'll send you a copy of our filings, which just lay out the case, the notice of inquiry, and yeah, they're overly long, 20 pages each, but I'll redact that into your 2 paragraphs as well. I think it's really important to remember that each system out there, WEA, EAS, et cetera, have their own capabilities. And if we can target the 1/9 of a DMA, 1/9 of a FIPS, yeah, that's better than nothing. It's better than spamming the whole marketplace. It's a start, but EAS has its role, and that is, basically, as my kid would say, OMG, the big one's coming. Okay, whether it's a tsunami or a hurricane or whatever, or not hurricane, or a tornado, whatever. WEA is wonderful.
It's also the last ditch that we have when the internet goes away.
Absolutely. And I want to keep reinforcing this. I was frankly shocked when the FCC asked the question, but then I realized they got to ask the question. Should we get rid of EAS and go cap only? It seems to work in Canada, but Canada has a satellite backup, very expensive one. Who pays for that? Also, their number of EAS participants is much smaller than the US. So anyway, I don't want to get into Canada, but yeah, I'll get you that stuff this evening as I can before I head out into Las Vegas.
Ed, does the National Weather Service appear on these committees? Are they active on it, or are they still in their little silo?
The National Weather Service tends to be very active, very proactive now. They were actually chaired the last CISRIC subgroup, working group on emergency alert issues. But then again, to be fair, that working group was focused on NWS issues. They came up with recommendations.
I've had really good conversations with Tim and his folks. They've been on our lunch gathering a couple of times. The problem is, again, how do you get this message that broadcasters are going to use? Because so many stations are automated, so many stations will either take it all or not, depending on how the box is programmed, and they rebel at the 2-minute messages.
So let me take a quick stab at that. I wanted to kind of throw two things out. In light of all changes that we're asking for, again, a modification to add TDX as an example, or some way of message IDing, everything else like that. That's all kind of future tense. It's stuff that we see a great opportunity to improve, to do that. But what can we do in the current real world situation? And Barry, to your point, you've got a National Weather Service person who their mission is to get information out there. They're weather geeks. They want to get it out there. They think it's whatever they do is a stream of continuous conversation about this particular message event. That's their mission. That's what they think is important. What we want, as we indicated before, is kind of the snippet. We wanted to give us the short, little, brief part of it that's important, and don't take up our airways, because this isn't really, your forum, and we're, a commercial entity, if you will, and we need to kind of keep these things as brief as possible. So one thing that we did in our box quite a while ago, actually, this is in our version 3, we developed the Alert Agent. Alert Agent is a very unique and highly customizable filtering tool that lets you look at specific inputs, specific events, and a whole range of different things, and says in the event that this occurs, okay, from this source with this particular thing, and so you can look at what your input sample is, what's the response, and what we can do, and we've done this, a number of our customers had a very, very, I'll say verbose National Weather Service group up in Montana, and every time the event came out, the guy would talk for the full 2 minutes, just filled the air, and that was a continuous break in the programming. So what they did is they programmed their DASDEC to say, okay, if it comes from National Weather Service, this is the input. If it has this particular event code on it, then what I want you to do is don't use the 2-minute audio, create a text-to-speech version, which is a very short burst of information from the original ZCZC string. Says, okay, create a text-to-speech thing, which ends up being 10 to 15 seconds, and then it's done. They've done what they needed to do. They've got the alert out, but they've truncated it by not taking and carrying the original audio, but using a very simple tool to say, in this particular situation, make a brief presentation and get it done.
And that's a feature that is an added cost.
No, it's built into every device since 2016. Our version 3 has it.
Okay, Lark?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, Richard and I spend a lot of time. Well, first of all, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So Richard asked me to help out with LA County. He tricked me. I think this was around 2006. I said I'd do it for 6 months. Maybe it was 2012. I don't remember. But the 6 months is now a little longer than that. And one of the things that you learn, now this is LA County. This is a big operation, and let's just say the county, originates these, and frankly, they have a difficult time between cyber attacks, turnover, technology changes to keep their origination operating at 100%. And that's somebody with resources. So I just want to stress that it is the people on this call that are going to make EAS work when the big one hits. It will be people on this call that need to remind the programmers, don't play games with the attention tone. We've tried to emphasize that anyway, but the old school daisy chain EAS, let me just back up and say, I think for the tests, the digital works great, sounds better. But in LA County, for example, Richard has stations out that really have a difficult time picking up the LPs. So we gave them a special carve out we put some barracks boxes in the county. And, we've just noticed we've had to use some recently because of a county transmission issue. And we had some trouble. They were breaking up, and so, keeping the internet up and going between all the cyber attacks, all the denial of service. And then think about this. Radio stations are the few people that are going to have generators running to provide power over an extended length of time. So I really appreciate this conversation. And what all needs to happen with the coding but the comment that Canada does more with EAS, and they made the good comment that the tones need to or cap whatever was good. Testing is one thing, but when it all goes sideways is a completely different story. And when we get there, I guarantee you it's going to be the Richards and the Barrys and us old goats that are going to be keeping this together. These digital technologies, I will tell you, I'm behind them 100%, because frankly, if you can get a barracks or whatever, the tests sound much better. And the programmers love it. They adore it. They think that's groovy. But, with so few resources, even with the County of Los Angeles, Richard knows we're pounding our heads against the wall, trying to get them to bring this to 5 nines. I'd be happy with 2 nines, if you know what I'm saying. So let's just back up for a second from somebody. I wear several hats on this that a few of you know and recognize, many of you don't. But, guys, if this is all good, but let's keep the daisy chain working and working well, because it might be what all we have left when there's a real disaster and not just testing.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Lark. Good comments.
By the way, if you want to reach out to me, Barry, did my presentation just go away?
We took the question screen down, but you can put up a business card or anything you want here.
I went away, which was okay. I just wanted to make sure, because I did have kind of another little final thing if they wanted to reach out and some contact information.
Excellent.
And I would say I've got something that we could talk about, an improvement over the barracks interconnection capabilities, but I'll leave that. If you want to reach out to me separately, I can explain what we do to really improve that and not use streaming protocol.
I'm going to also ask you to send me some material here, maybe a step-by-step that we can share with folks on how to do that text to speech?
If you'd like, we could actually just do and I know you've got different things. We could do another session at some other point and kind of show people how it works. Just do it a live event.
If there's enough interest, I'd be happy to do that. Folks, if you'd like to see that, stick your hand up now or send me a note. Let me know.
But so one other thing too, and I wanted to kind of point out going early on about, and I've always thought about this, is the fact that if you get into your car, you turn on the radio and you came out of the shopping mall, whatever, and the event already happened and you didn't see it, you don't know that you're under a tornado warning or things like that, which is why I've always liked on the radio side, at least on the FM radio side, leveraging the capability of RDS. And being able to actually put the information in RDS and have it on the RDS display for the duration of the event. Now, there's a lot of confusion because of the fact that you're going to have an event that plays out for, let's say, the 15, 20 seconds where the audio is played out and then it's finished in the radio world. But the duration of the event, the effective time of the event, is much longer. And if we can put that in a ancillary display, again, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about is where else can we put this information vis-a-vis ATSC-III in the AEA format. RDS is another great way to do that, where we could put the textual information of what's going on in RDS, and it can stay up for the duration of the event, not for the actual play out of the event, but for the duration. And that way it'd be great because I could tune on when I hit my radio, the RDS is displayed, hey, tornado warning for the next 45 minutes, whatever it might be. Always like that capability. So wherever we've got it, and by the way, we've got that built into our systems where you can talk with like Innovonics RDS encoders, and it will keep that information alive for the duration of the event. So it's kind of some slick things about being able to do that, or feed it into your automation system to be able to present it to the RDS encoders that way. So I think that's a great way to do it. And at least obviously for FM and the capabilities on the FM side, it's another really good way to present that contact, that, as Ed pointed out, and put it in something that isn't necessarily always in front of your face, always disruptive, but that people can see and recognize. So finally, and Barry, I don't know if there's any other questions. I know that we're coming up on the close to 2 hour. You might have some other things. Again, there's our contact information if you guys would like to reach out and contact us. Appreciate it, and obviously appreciate the opportunity to kind of give you guys a first world peek at what we're doing, and really a lot more discussion around why this is and continues to be an important topic. So with that, I will say thank you.
Okay, I will I just throw this up real quick here for those that are still with us. Would you like to see, I've seen already a half dozen hands that would like to see such a presentation. And if you would just click on this as to if the text to speech would be something that would help you guys. I've already seen 24 yeses and 1 no. And I'll leave it up for a few more moments here. And if you would do that, I think the answer, Bill, is yes, we would like to do that.
Right. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to come back and we'll do a real world show and tell, show you how to do that.
And anything else, folks, if you have a desire to learn what this could do. In fact, yeah, Bill, let's do a little quick part with the email sending out, especially that feature selective email that you mentioned. And we'll do that as a presentation after NAB.
Barry?
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to clarify, when I said all the old goats on this, I didn't mean old people. I meant the greatest of all time. This group is one of the premier groups. It's one of the best kept secrets in media. And the folks that call into this routinely have, if you add up their years of experience and wisdom, it is worth a whole lot more than an expensive think tank. So when I say GOAT, I truly mean the greatest of all time.
Well, that's very kindly of you to refer to us that way. I do invite everyone to talk to your colleagues, talk to your friends, talk to the folks in your facilities. You know, the IT folks as well are welcome. The even programmers are welcome. We don't throw them out. Rich Wood comes in and talks to us about some interesting things from time to time. And yeah, this is probably the hardest thing for me is how do we bring more people to the BDR into our lunch gathering? And we're here. I'm not going away just because the masks are starting to come off. As long as there's interest, as long as you folks want to learn things, I'll be here.